Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Patrick Phillips. I run a website called I Want Media, iwantmedia.com. It's a website that follows the media industry, and I'm also an adjunct professor here in the Arthur L. Carter Journalism Institute at New York University. Welcome to I Want Media's panel discussion on the future of media. I'd like to quickly thank Institute Chair Brooke Kroger for allowing me to host this event, and thank the NYU staff and students who are helping out here today. And I want to thank Livestream, which is providing the live webcast, and a clip of this session today will be posted later on I Want Media and hopefully elsewhere. For those of you who are compelled to tweet today, the hashtag is IWM, and I'd like to ask you all to turn off your devices if you have them so we don't interrupt our proceedings here today. Today's panel is on the future of media 2010. I've held a Future of Media panel for the past couple of years, ever since Internet Week started, and we've been fortunate to have some great, smart people talking about who are pushing the boundaries of media to be with us. Like last year, we had Twitter founder Jack Dorsey and Craigslist Craig Newmark, and the first year I did this, we had Newser's Michael Wolff, who actually at that panel he made the remark that. Within 5 years, he said Newsweek would probably be out of business. And here we are a couple of years later, and Newsweek, unfortunately, is facing some problems. But today we have some other really smart, boundary-pushing people who are in part responsible for some of the changes we're seeing in the media industry today. I'd like to introduce them really fast. To my immediate left, we have Jonathan Geller, who is founder and editor of Boy Genius Report, a blog focused on mobile gadgets. Jonathan launched the site in 2006, just a few months after he got the start as a blogger for AOL's Engadget when you were 19, is that right?
17.
17. Whoa. Boy Genius Report has picked up 7 employees along the way and now attracts 1.5 million readers a month. In April, the site was acquired by Mail.com Media in a, quote, multi-million-dollar deal. Mail.com also owns the Hollywood news blogs run by Nikki Fink and Bonnie Fuller. And Jonathan just turned 23, 22? Okay. You're 23.
Yeah.
Wow. Multi-million. When I was 23, the internet didn't exist yet. So, Arianna, what were you doing when you were 23?
It was 3,000 years ago.
Oh, 3,000, okay, all right, okay. Next to Jonathan, we have Josh Cohen, who is the Senior Business Product Manager for Google News, a service that aggregates headlines from many of the world's news sources. He's responsible for global product strategy, marketing, and publisher outreach for Google News, which is available in 26 languages and more than 50 countries. Is this all right? Yep. Prior to joining Google, Josh was Vice President of Business Development for Reuters Media, where he oversaw business agreements with AOL, Google, MSN, Yahoo, and numerous media companies. And before Reuters, Josh was Director of Business Development for SmartMoney.com. Jimmy Pitaro is Vice President of Yahoo Media, where he's responsible for the growth and development of Yahoo's media properties, which reach more than 81 million unique visitors a month. Jimmy oversees the programming, content, and business strategies for Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo Entertainment, Yahoo Games, and Shine, a website for women. Just a few weeks ago, Yahoo entered an agreement to acquire Associated Content, a 6-year-old company that produces thousands of articles written by freelancers. David Ohm is president of AOL Media and Studios, where he oversees AOL's network of content sites, as well as the Seed.com publishing platform, the Studio Now video platform, and AOL's New York City and Los Angeles studios. David joined AOL from Google News, where he's responsible for the global business development in video, print, and local content businesses. David started his career in media at NBC, where he led some of NBC's first cross-media initiatives. And just this week, he was named the number 1 person on the Hollywood Reporter's Digital Power 50 list. Cindy Levy is editor-in-chief of Glamour, the celebrated women's magazine published by Condé Nast. Cindy became editor in 2001 after Bonnie Fuller. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Bonnie Fuller was here last year. Under Cindy, Glamour has won more than 170 journalism awards and now reaches more than 12 million readers per month. Its many honors include National Magazine Awards for General Excellence, and it's been named to both Ad Age's A-list and Adweek's Hot List under Cindy's watch. And at this year's National Magazine Awards a few months ago, Glamour was named Magazine of the Year, a new honor recognizing the successful use of both print and digital. Dan Abrams is an attorney, legal analyst, and longtime anchor for NBC News and MSNBC. Dan is currently chief legal analyst for NBC News and founder of Abrams Research, a media strategy firm. And in the past year, he became a website publisher as founder and CEO of Mediaite, a website focused on the media. He also created the style, news, and opinion site Styleite, the geek culture site Geekosystem, a sports news and opinion site Sports Grid, and is the co-founder of the celebrity news site Gossip Cop. And on top of all that, he just opened a restaurant, the Lion in the West Village. You're a busy person.
Appreciate that additional promotion.
And last but not least, Arianna Huffington, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post, a news and blog site launched in 2005 that has become one of the most widely read, linked to, and frequently cited media brands on the internet. She is a nationally syndicated columnist and author of 12 books, and among her many honors, she has been named to the Time 100, Time Magazine's list of the world's most influential people. And in 2008, she was voted Media Person of the Year in an online poll on my website, I Want Media. She got thousands of votes. So we have a smart group here. And there are cards that were left in your chairs here, and there are cards available outside if people have, and there are pins all over the place. If people have questions they'd like to ask the panelists, we'll pick them up toward the end of the hour, and we'll pose some of those questions to them. Cindy, I'd like to start a conversation with you. You're the traditional media person here.
Figured that was my role on this panel.
You're it. Many traditional media outlets are having to face the fact of transitioning to the digital media world. And as I said briefly in your introduction, Glamour was just recognized with the National Magazine Award for successfully using both print and digital. So what are you doing right? Well, what are you doing that maybe some of your peers aren't doing?
Well, also, what am I doing that I wasn't doing a couple of years ago? Because before getting a few things right, we did get almost everything wrong. So in the interest of educating all of us, I'll share some of the stuff that we did get wrong. I think when you're a traditional print person, as I was, and most magazine editors-in-chief are, and you start thinking about taking your brand digital, first of all, there's a sense of, gosh, the most important thing is to protect the brand, which of course is true. That is the most important thing. But you think, well, if I'm going to do that well, then I need to take my trusted print people and really put them in charge of this thing. And that's what I did for years, really. And we limped along at very low traffic numbers. You know, we have, as you said, in print, we have 12 million readers every month. And online, we were looking at, 300,000 unique visitors a month. And that discrepancy obviously was telling me something. Beyond that, we were taking a lot of the things that we do in print, that we know readers love in print, and we were either just putting them up online or doing extensions of them online. I mean, there used to be a real sort of cliche when you would read a magazine a few years ago, and you would see, for more, go to such-and-such.com. So there was that idea that the site was really there as an add-on to the magazine. And of course, your reader, or in our case, any young woman who's going to glamour.com on any given day, probably doesn't care about what's in the magazine that month. She may additionally want to read that, but she's not going to the site to try to find out and more. She's going to the site to get something that's going to entertain and inform her at that moment. So we did two things that I think were significant. First, brought in a real web native team that, yes, could understand our brand's DNA, but then could do all the things that you need to do in order to make a successful website. And secondly, we just started thinking in a very different way about what the site should be about. We thought, well, it has to be in keeping with the brand values of Glamour, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with the content of the magazine. And we went very rapidly up to about 3 million uniques a month when we started giving readers really what they had always wanted on a daily basis.
So how is the website different from the magazine, do you feel?
Well, on the website, we have 4 core areas, our 4 core areas: fashion, beauty, health and fitness, and relationships. And in each of those areas, it's really a blog-oriented site. I mean, it's very simple.
I noticed on your website you have blogs right up front and center.
Front and center. It's not a site with a lot of bells and whistles. We spent, another thing that I think a lot of magazine editors, used to do in trying to go digital is think, well, gosh, if I only invent this one special app that's going to allow people to, try on outfits if they post in a picture of themselves and, share items from their closets and sell them online. There was always this idea that we had to invent some magical, extremely complicated app in order to really grow. And truthfully, what we found our readers wanted was to hear from glamour-voiced columnists on the subjects that interest them most, and to get the news of the day through that glamour filter, and to be able to talk to each other. And it became an instant conversation with about 25,000 comments a month on the site. In the magazine, obviously, they're willing to read 3,000, 4,000 word stories on topics that interest them. And I know that some magazine editors have had the experience of finding that on their websites, people are interested in long-form journalism. On our site, people are interested in, yes, intelligent content, but mostly shorter, quicker takes.
Arianna, as some traditional media outlets are transitioning to digital, have you ever thought of, with the Huffington Post, have you ever considered going the other direction and doing a print media outlet of some kind?
No, we've considered a lot of things. That's one thing we have not considered. But in a sense, we are integrating more and more of traditional journalism. We are hiring more reporters. We launched the Huffington Post Investigative Fund that does in-depth investigative pieces. And, we call ourselves the Internet newspaper. And the reason for that is because we're covering so much more than politics. When we launched in 2005, we were seen as primarily covering politics. Now we have 20 sections. And our college section, our comedy section, our entertainment section, our style section drive a lot of our traffic. In fact, only a quarter of our traffic comes from politics. So it's a very different universe than when we launched. And what Cindy said about the fact that people go online because they want to share stories, I think that is such a key. So social media has been a very big part of HuffPost growth. What we're doing with Facebook Connect, with Twitter. We launched Twitter editions for every section, including the home section. And we are now up to 2.5 million comments a month. So we have a very, very engaged community. And from the beginning, we wanted, again, which was part of the traditional values, we wanted to make sure there was a civil environment. So from the beginning, we had human moderators, because there isn't no technology that can completely protect you from trolls and ad hominem attacks. So that also made a big difference, that people could come there, and unless a moderator slipped and was tired and had not gotten enough sleep, Cindy, and made a mistake, they would never be attacked personally. There would be a real debate about the issues. Whether the issues are the BP spill or wearing flat shoes as opposed to high heels, the issues don't have to be of earth-shattering importance, but there are things that really engage our readers.
The Huffington Post just turned 5 years old, and it's a phenomenal success. And on the occasion of your site's 5th birthday, you did an interview with the Wall Street Journal in which you mentioned that you felt the site launched 5 years ago as a, quote, answer to Matt Drudge, but that's certainly not where we are now. What do you mean? So you've moved in a different direction? Are you not the opposite end of the spectrum to Drudge Report anymore, or how do you see? What did you mean by that?
What I meant is that yes, we've moved a long way from that. The favorite tagline now of our politics team is beyond left and right. We believe that this left-right way of looking at political issues is obsolete, knee-jerk, and it distorts the way we look at politics. If you look at the biggest issues of our time, if you look at the BP oil spill right now, there is no left-wing answer and right-wing answer. The idea that you have now Southern governors and Republican governors who have made a life excoriating government, begging on government to do more, and attacking Barack Obama for trusting a private corporation. How could he? And this is just one example. You take Afghanistan. When George Will came out against escalating in Afghanistan, we splashed it on the homepage, and the headline was "Beyond Left and Right. George Will criticizes the president on Afghanistan." We are partnering with the Cato Institute, a very libertarian institute, on foreign policy. So I think that's part of what we're trying to do, is show the rest of the media that looking at everything through the left-right prism makes it very hard to understand what's happening. The primaries today, it's very hard to understand what's going to be happening, let's say with Blanche Lincoln in trouble in Arkansas, et cetera, if you just try to see, so what's the left doing and what's the right doing?
The Huffington Post has, like I said, has been a phenomenal success. Henry Blodgett of Business Insider recently wrote that in another 5 years, Huffington Post will likely blow past the New York Times and CNN to become the largest independent news site in the world. Is that is that what you're expecting?
Let me just say something about me. I'm a superstitious Greek peasant girl, and I don't do predictions. I don't do anything hubristic. I take it day by day. I love what I'm doing. I feel very blessed.
Well, looking at the traffic of your site and how it's growing, I mean, do you see it going in that direction? I mean, he had also said that by the end of this year, the Huffington Post should be bigger than the New York Times in terms of online traffic. Is that what you see happening?
You know, we are constantly looking at ways to increase our traffic. Everybody's doing that. We are doing a lot that will bring new sections, new audience, but I can't give you an exact prediction of where we're going to be at the end of the year, because that's not really how we're approaching it. I feel if you become obsessed with only traffic, then you lose your DNA. You lose who you are and what you are. So our editors are never judged by traffic alone. We never have any financial inducement.
Well, how do you judge your editors?
We judge our editors by what is the DNA of their section. Let's say if you take our college editor, it was launched by Jose Antonio Vargas, who joined us from the Washington Post. He's already now moved on to other projects. And Leah Finnegan, who succeeded him, who's straight out of Columbia Journalism School, has really managed to create a place where students from the almost 80 colleges now that partner with us can have a regular platform, where academics can have a regular platform, which is a place that you want to go to find out anything that's happening about colleges, whether it's a suicide at Cornell, or the latest commencement speech at Yale, or anything at a community college. And as long as it's a place which really you want to go to and which keeps growing, either because of the great content or the great social media, that's great for us. And I feel that's really important if you're going to have a creative environment where innovation is really rewarded. Otherwise, editors will always go for the easy way to get the traffic.
What's the easy way to get the traffic?
The easy way is to do like lowest common denominator stories, and we do some of them. But to do...
Well, why do you do them? To get traffic?
We do them because that's part of also what is part of our entertainment section, for example.
Okay.
A lot of the Hollywood stories, a lot of the who is sleeping with whom stories, a lot of the, Sandra Bullock was a big story. I mean, we're going to cover it. We're not beyond covering everything, but this is not the only thing driving our editors.
Dan, with your websites, do you have the same approach? Do you do something different? I mean, are you focused on traffic? Or?
Well, I mean, look, I think we'd all like to focus strictly on the editorial side of it, on the quality of what we do. At least from my perspective, as a practical reality, traffic matters. And for a startup, where all my sites are less than a year old, traffic is very important to us. But we also are in the position where how we get that traffic is significant. So if we were just doing lowest common denominator as a new set of sites, I don't think we would be getting traffic. And it's interesting that the stories that are being linked to the most from my various sites are the ones where we have a unique take, or we were the first ones to break the story, or there was a particularly creative way that they did it. So it's, for us at least at this point, lowest common denominator isn't translating into traffic. And so we're in the kind of the luxurious position of wanting to do quality, both because it's a good thing as a moral, practical matter, and it's good for business.
You've had a long career in television journalism, and suddenly in the past year you became a internet publisher. So how did that come about?
Tell them about the outfit.
Yeah. I think that for me, it's so obvious that the internet is the Wild West still. People would say to me, when I started Mediaite, the first site that I started, people said, "Oh, we need another media site? Really?" And my response was, my goodness, we're going to have a lot more sites doing a lot more things in the next 5, 10 years. So the notion that we're still in its infancy, I mean, the fact that the Huffington Post is 5 years old and is already being talked about as passing the New York Times is astonishing. And it says to me that there is an enormous opportunity for us to create these different, and similar to what Huffington Post does, different areas of expertise, et cetera, to really build that business up. So why did I want to do it? Look, I have the luxury of still being in the TV business in one arm, and in the other arm, what I think is the future of the media business, which is the opportunity to create these kinds of websites that I think are already seeing growth beyond what I expected. So it's been really exciting.
Well, Jonathan, you certainly found, I guess, this to be a growing area, at least for you. I mean, what you've accomplished. Tell us briefly about the Boy Genius Report, how it got started, how it came to being.
It was really started as a passion for me. I think I probably had a StarTech when I was around 9 years old. Thanks, Dad. So, I started the site to basically share information I had, which is exclusive information. That was breaking stories on the new BlackBerry or our iPhone or carrier information.
And you were how old?
I was 17.
And how did you get this exclusive information?
Long story. Basically, sources I'd built up that trusted me. From
Sources at 17?
Yeah. And
Great.
I started contributing to Engadget, and what's so great about that is they gave me an avenue to actually share everything. From that point on, I really wanted to do this and started the site, and just myself, and that was it, basically it.
So, within a couple of years, you've created a multi-million-dollar news brand, which, I mean, elaborates on what you're talking about. So how big was this deal? How many million did you make off it?
I guess I could say the terms of the deal are confidential.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you plan to use this new funding? Are you going to launch other sites? Or are you going to hire more people? What are you going to do?
What's great about the deal with Mail.com is that I've literally gone from a single person business, and that's me doing everything, and I mean everything, for 4 years. And now I all of a sudden have a resource of 200 people doing marketing or sales or technical. And for me, that's great.
From Mail.com. I
Yeah.
mean, these aren't people that you've hired. These
Correct.
are his
That's
people.
their internal team.
Do you work out of home, or how does that work?
I do a bit of both. I go to their offices. And I
Oh,
also
they have an
work
office here that you
in New
go
York.
to.
Yeah.
And how many journalists do you have working for you? Or with
So
you?
right now, just 2 writers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
And basically expanding the content of the site from just a mobile site to general tech and going from there.
Well, in addition to people just out of their teens launching websites, some of the leading internet giants are entering internet publishing as well more aggressively. AOL, which just turned 25, it largely was once thought of as America's entrance to the internet. And now, what is AOL now?
AOL is, I just used this term yesterday publicly for the first time, but AOL is a start around. It's a company in turnaround. We acknowledge that, but the shadow of what it once was still looms very, very large. We have over 100 million uniques in the U.S. a month, almost 250 globally. And how we're thinking about engineering this start around this turnaround is by thinking of it as a startup. So we look at ourselves as a multi-billion-dollar startup, and we want to be the world's largest producer of high-quality digital content, period.
How do you define high quality?
Ultimately, quality in this day and age is reflected in the kind of relationships that you have with your users, with the community of people who help contribute and build the content that you have, and with your advertisers. So It's, lots of different ways to define it, but we use a small list of metrics, and we think that quality ultimately is reflected in those metrics.
So can you tell us about some of your publishing ventures? So what is seed.com?
Well, to understand Seed, you have to, I think, appreciate what our content strategy is. And our strategy really is in becoming the largest producer of high-quality content. We believe that you have to find an equilibrium between starting with really high-quality editorial and journalists who can shepherd the process of leveraging best-in-class technology to create large volumes of information, of content. And Seed is one part of the ecosystem we have at AOL to produce lots of different types of content. So it can be articles, it can be photos, it can be videos, and you can think about these pieces of content as almost being atoms, if you will. And what we have is people in-house. We have over 500 journalists and editors in-house, along with thousands who are in our network, and up to 40,000 actually in our Seed and Studio Now network, who pull together these atoms and produce molecules. These are the experiences that you have online. And then we take those experiences and we think about how we distribute it. So you have Seed producing lots of content, we have our in-house editors programming the experiences, and then we have colleagues who are distributing the content. And each of those steps is very distinct. They're very important. And the last part, distribution, is something that I think people are beginning to think more about as social networks become more mainstream. But it's really no longer about bringing the audiences to where you decide the content is, right? It's really about taking the content to where the audiences already are and finding interesting ways to monetize that. So as we think about what the AOL content approach is, Seed is an incredibly vital, evolving part of our strategy.
So what are some of the areas of news or subjects that Seed covers? I mean,
well, virtually all of them. So we have, not unlike people here on the panel, we cover a wide variety of subjects ranging from women's lifestyle to entertainment to news and sports and finance to market. We have a group called Marketplace where we have things like travel and autos and shopping. So in every aspect, in every vertical, you have the opportunity to, again, build large volumes of information, of structured data. And you have ways to take that information, put it in different combinations, and add editorial on top of it. So it's literally not just getting pieces of content and throwing it out there. And by the way, there's viable models and interesting experiences that can be had that way. But the way we're approaching it is to say, what are the best ways to engage our audiences? And the editors we have live and breathe the subject matter, as Sydney knows, and Seed and the content that is being produced with Seed and Studio Now are elements that they can rely on to produce this.
Jimmy, from what I understand, Yahoo has a similar strategy going forward with web publishing. And are you doing something similar to what AOL is doing? Do you see yourself as rivals?
I'll answer the first part first. Yes, it's definitely similar. You know, we've spent the past 4 years focused primarily on building out a voice. You know, if you rewind to 1995, Yahoo was primarily about content aggregation. That was our DNA. There was a web page, and we would provide access to the best of the web. About 4 years ago, we made the choice to start building out an editorial team within Yahoo Sports. And the idea was to start building up some trust and some credibility, a voice, a personality, a tone within the site. And we did it responsibly. We didn't go out and hire 300 people. We hired about a team of about 20 writers and editors. And very quickly, they started to break news. And we saw the value of that. Just about every week, we would turn on ESPN and hear them saying, Yahoo Sports reporting. And for a company that didn't do very much on the PR side or on in the offline marketing business, that was very good for us. It was very powerful. And what we saw is that the league started to take us more seriously, because we were actually producing credible news. And it was this cycle where we were producing these stories, breaking news. The league started to take us more seriously and started to want to license us their content, their video and their text. And as a result of that, we put the content up on the site, built up more credibility, more talented writers wanted to join our team. So it was all working very nicely. Then what we decided to do is to extend into the blogging arena. So we hired Jamie Mottram and asked him to start producing league-specific blogs. That was also very successful. And what it did is it was very different from what our professional writers were doing in that it enabled us to be fast twitch. We could create content that was specifically in response to audience needs, whether those needs were being identified through all of our data, like our search data, or our click-through rates on the site, or whether it was a little bit more manual, where we actually had our editors looking across the internet to identify topics and trends. Whatever it was, we now had a team of bloggers that could very quickly respond to those topics and trends and create content that was very likely to be promoted off of the front page of Yahoo and very likely to resonate with our audience. So we had so much success within sports. You know, we went from being about 12 million unique users to today we're about 40 million, significantly ahead of ESPN and the rest of the market, that we, about a year and a half ago, made the decision to start investing in other verticals. So we built out, or we're in the process of building out an original editorial team within Yahoo News. We hired guys like Andrew Golis and Michael Calderon, who I believe is in the audience right now. So we've built out a DC office, which is headed up by Jane Sassine. So you know, the idea is to extend what we've done within sports into properties like news, like finance, like entertainment. And by the way, as we do this, to do it responsibly. So that's where you see the associated content acquisition that we just made. You know, what we're doing here is we're trying to strike the balance. I read something on paid content last night, an article. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but it was an incredibly thoughtful article. And he used the term pro-am, which I thought was dead on. It's exactly what we're trying to do. We have this professional content that we're creating, and then we have, so I don't want to say it's amateur content, because a lot of the people that are contributing content into the Associated Content Network are not amateurs. But I think you understand what I'm getting at. Have this network of professional writers and bloggers, but to truly scale, you actually need content from the crowd. So for me, if tomorrow I'm sitting in a meeting with Gillette, and I'm pitching them something about Yahoo Sports, and they say to me, "Okay, that's great, but we would also like some lacrosse content." Today, our pre-associated content acquisition, I didn't have the ability to create a lacrosse vertical or to produce lacrosse content. It just wasn't economically feasible for me. Now we can assign topics out to this network of 380,000 contributors and have them produce content specifically for lacrosse or for local politics, whatever the topic might be. So to wrap it up, what we're trying to do is really just, we're trying to round out our sites. We have this professionally produced content, but we can't do all things. It's just not scalable. So the associated content comes into the mix because it just gives us the ability to really be a true starting point and offer all this content.
Some of your publishing endeavors, I mean, for both you and AOL, I've read that they've been described as content farms, which I don't know, that doesn't strike me as a positive connotation. What does that mean?
I don't think it's fair.
What does that mean?
I'm not quite
It's all you.
sure what it means. I think that label is often attributed to companies that are creating content at scale.
Uh-huh.
And I think it would be a mistake to put in a box all companies that create content at scale as not producing quality, to use your question from before. That said, I think it probably is accurate to say that companies who do that rely more on technology and algorithms to guide the process of and the decision making about what subjects to cover and what content to produce. You know, I think, I can't speak for Jimmy, but for us, producing content at scale is an essential element of what we want to do. But I go back to 2 points. One is we have hundreds of journalists in-house. 80% of our content is produced internally by journalists that are employed by AOL today, and we're going to hire, I think we may be the largest single hirer of journalists in the world next year, if you include what we're doing with Patch. But
How many do you expect to hire?
Hundreds.
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 Okay.
And what I would say is that it's really combining those top quality journalists and marrying it with the technology where you can get that kind of scale that really matters.
And you'll pay your journalists enough for them to live on.
Well, I think what needs to evolve, in this new ecosystem is, and Jimmy made the point earlier, is that many people who participate in these networks where they are contributing content creators, whether it's in seed or associated content, many actually are published journalists themselves. And what isn't quite clear, and it's evolving, is what are all the different business models? How do you connect the creation of these pieces of content ultimately to audiences and to advertisers? And from there will fall differing ways to compensate these journalists. But I think what we're committed to doing is making sure that we can recognize those who are producing the kind of content that resonates most with our users and make sure they're appropriately rewarded.
Jimmy, TechCrunch reported last Friday that that Yahoo is in talks with Huffington Post to partner with it or acquire it. Is there anything you want to tell us?
I knew you would ask me that. I first have to say, we don't comment on rumors and speculation.
Okay.
What I will say is that we have a fantastic relationship with the Huffington Post. We today have a pretty large partnership with Arianna and team within Yahoo News. If you go to Yahoo News, there's actually a co-branded environment that is populated by Huffington Post news content. And we're very happy with the relationship. We're very happy with the partnership. We're always looking at different opportunities with the Huffington Post. And we're very close with the team. I mean, a lot of the team that Arianna's put together are ex-Yahoos. So we're very close with these guys. I spend a lot of time with Arianna talking about various ways that we can partner, and we're big fans.
Arianna, is the Huffington Post for sale?
No, right now what I'm very excited about is the new partnership that Jimmy and I and the Yahoo team are working on with Shine, which is the women's lifestyle content, which is sort of my other passion, as Cindy knows, because Cindy and I partnered on a sleep challenge at the beginning of the year, getting people to lead less sleep-deprived existences. So taking all these passions around both really women's and men's choices around our lives and how can we lead lives that are less stressful and more fulfilled is something that I'm really excited about, working more closely with Yahoo and doing more together. So this is definitely the beginning of a deeper and deeper partnership.
Cindy, is Shine, do you see that as like a rival?
We actually partner with Shine
We do.
quite a
Everyone's
bit.
partnering with
Yes.
us.
Yeah,
That's
well,
great.
which for print people was a big hurdle. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like I'm calling up the editor.
So does that mean you get traffic from Yahoo?
We
or-
do. We get
They do?
traffic. And, I think sometimes there's a temptation to sort of belittle syndicated traffic, that you might get from a partnership with Yahoo. But we find that because it's not just we're slapping something up on your site and you're not doing it haphazardly, it is a very curated and careful relationship. The traffic that we get back to glamour.com behaves almost identically to quote-unquote organic traffic on glamour.com. So, we feel this is our reader, and if there's a way we can reach her by partnering with you or anyone else, we'll do it.
Yeah, so just to extend off of that, so if you look at our content mix, as I said, we create a lot of our own content. We don't create quite as much as David is right now, but it's a large part of what we do. Then we have content that we license in from places like the AP and Reuters. Then we have user-generated content, obviously. And then the last component, which we don't talk about very much, but is very important, is actually third-party content where we're linking off. And for me, if Yahoo's really going to be a starting point, we have to do that. That has to be part of our DNA. Because we're never, no matter what we buy, no matter how many writers we hire, we're never going to be able to do everything. But what we do want
Linking
to do,
off, do you mean you aggregate? Is that what you mean?
no, what I mean is putting a link on our site going back to Glamour.
Oh, okay.
And I have no problem with that. I mean, look, if anyone does have a problem with that, I think they're going to miss out, because it's an open web right now. So if I want someone coming to Shine getting everything that they want around women's lifestyles, I'm never going to be able to produce all of that, and all of the users that we invite to submit content are never going to be able to produce enough content to appeal to everyone. So what we're doing is we're linking off very often and driving traffic and helping places like Glamour actually grow.
Josh, I don't mean to, I hope you're not feeling ignored here. You have, Google News has a very different strategy from, say, AOL and Yahoo. Can you tell us, what is Google News?
Yeah, so we don't create content. We don't have
So
journalists.
Google is not a media company.
People can define it however
Or
they want.
does it
whether
really
media
matter
or
if it's defined that
technology or
way
advertising
anymore?
company.
AOL and Yahoo are now media companies. That's what you call yourselves now. Is that correct?
I would say I actually agree. It's hard to define the company, but I would say we are a technology-enabled media company.
Okay.
I mean, how can you be a website and not be a media? How can you be a website and not be a technology company? I mean,
Glamour is a technology-enabled media company.
I'm not sure I've ever said it that way, but yes.
Okay.
But yes, we're
Once
a
you get on the
we're a media-
iPad and all that,
we're a
then
media
you're-
company,
Yes, okay. So really, okay. So I'm sorry.
No, I
Google
mean, so,
News. Tell us about Google News.
I mean, the folks here are all creating really high quality content, and we see our job is one of discovery. It's helping people find that information. I mean, Jimmy talks about sort of creating a lot of original content. Also, part of it is linking off. That's sort of our exclusive model. What we're doing with Google News is pretty consistent with what we're doing with web search as well. Again, we don't have any journalists, we don't have any editors, but what we're trying to do is, as these people are producing that content, as more and more information comes on the web, it gets really hard to actually find something that you're looking for.
How does Google News benefit the news outlets whose work you aggregate?
How do we benefit them? By sending them a tremendous amount of traffic. I mean, I'm just talking about specifically about Google News. In a given month, Google News sends, just to the sources within Google News, from Google News, about 1 billion clicks every single month. If you add in web search as well, and again, just talking about the sources within Google News, that number gets closer to about 4 billion or so clicks. And so the traffic in that sense, I mean, these people are creating content not to do it in a vacuum for necessarily their own reading and enjoyment, but rather so that people can actually go to their websites and sort of find that information. From the news part of it, it's really about driving distribution opportunities for them. And Google overall looks at it from a couple of different angles. Also, obviously, we work with a number of different publishers about monetization and helping them make money off of that content, as well as from the technology side of it by leveraging a lot of the tools and platforms that we have so that people can create great websites. I think Huffington Post is a great example of that, not necessarily with Google tools, but things where they take Facebook Connect or sort of Twitter streams and they're not going to spend their time necessarily creating their own social network or real-time feeds, but rather they leverage the technologies that are out there. We do the same sorts of things with a number of different publishers where, I mean, Google Maps being one of the easiest examples to point out where very few organizations are going to spend their time creating mapping software, but if you can take this open API that we have available and layer editorial information on top of that to create a really compelling experience on the web, that I think we see that as benefiting us both. So if you look at sort of the overall Google picture, it's along those 3 different lines, but Google News specifically is really about discovery.
I'd like to remind everyone, if you have questions for the panelists, there are cards available and pins, so if you want to write your questions now, and we'll collect them momentarily. Olivia, if you're out there, if you can start collecting them if anyone has any questions. There are some people who have had problems with Google News. Notably Rupert Murdoch and some of his news outlets. He's been very vocal about Google News. I mean, he said recently, we're going to stop Google from taking our content, using it for free, and described you as stealing content. So how do you respond to that?
Look, it's.
Are you stealing content?
No. We shocked by that response. We respect copyright laws, But in some ways, I mean, you can have this legal debate about fair use or not, but it's really, it's the publisher's content. If any publisher doesn't want us to index that content, we won't. They put a little bit of code on their page to block our crawlers, and we'll honor that. It's something called Robots Exclusion Protocol. All you have to do is and it's not a Google-specific thing. You know, AOL does this, Microsoft, any of the other sort of major search engines that are out there.
Do a lot of do a lot of media outlets do that?
No, they don't. I mean, I think that gets back to the larger issue of the value that we are delivering to publishers on a daily basis. The traffic that we send, you know, clearly it's each one of those clicks is a business opportunity. Now, I mean, whether or not they want to sort of allow us access to crawl that or put up paywalls, it's completely their decision. It really has nothing to do with, I mean, you can have these legal debates about it, but it's a business decision. And I think the vast majority of publishers that are out there, and we've got over 25,000 sources or so worldwide in Google News, the vast majority of those sort of see the value that we're delivering to them.
Incidentally, this is a lot of barking and no bite, because if Rupert Murdoch wanted to discontinue Google, quote-unquote, stealing the content, they could have done that the same day that he issued that threat.
Well, actually,
So-
now isn't his Times of London newspapers? They're now blocking Google.
Well, they're
is
blocking
that
everybody.
correct?
They're blocking all search engines.
Is that a good move?
I mean, it remains to be seen. And I think they're trying to probably go in for a model of sort of scarcity and thinking that if fewer people have access to it, and as opposed to sort of making your content more broadly available, that there's an advantage to be had there. But I mean, I think he's sort of putting the bite behind the bark, I guess, to some extent.
But you know what is
Is
so
that a
interesting-
good move on his part, do you think?
Well, I personally think that all the evidence of consumer habits, of how people really go to sites and look at news or any other story shows that it's not a good business decision. I mean, it's good for those of us here, because anytime Rupert Murdoch or anyone else puts their content behind paywalls, and more consumers will be coming to our site. So it's good for us. But I mean, you even see, look at the Wall Street Journal. You know, the Wall Street Journal subscription universe is shrinking because more and more people can find a lot of that information in a lot of other financial sites. So increasingly, what we see is people pay for information that is either very, very exclusive financial information that they can use to make investment decisions, or very, very weird porn, you know, things that they can't get easily.
She said weird porn, in case you didn't, the accent sometimes.
And I mean really,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really weird.
How weird,
Because, you know, because the kind of run-of-the-mill
As
porn
opposed
you
to
can get
high-quality
anywhere.
content.
Yeah.
So online paywalls for news sites, in general, are they good? Good idea, bad idea? It works for some people, maybe it won't work for others?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think for some publishers with unique content that you can't get anywhere else, paywalls can and do work. I mean, I don't think any of these things are necessarily a panacea to some of the challenges that news publishers are facing. But sure, for some people it absolutely can work, and you don't have to make a decision between being discoverable and putting up a paywall. You can do both, and the Wall Street Journal is a good example of that. And the Times in their strategy. The New York Times in their strategy about putting up a paywall has talked about that, about trying to get incremental revenue, but not necessarily sort of hurting the growing web business that they have.
Does anyone have any questions? There's someone Olivia, do you have any cards? Has anyone written down anything? Can you bring them in? And collect the ones here too. Can you pass them over to the end of the rows? And Cindy, do you have a problem with Google News and other news aggregators scraping your site and aggregating, and you don't have a problem with that?
Those are not loaded terms at all. No, not right now. I mean, there's nothing on our site, obviously on glamour.com, that is behind any kind of a paywall. You know, because what we do best, I think, is not just deliver news and deliver headlines, but deliver a point of view on a day's news. I mean, we have, you know, if you care about fashion, we have a team of reporters who go backstage at the fashion shows, but they're not just telling you, you know, here's what it's going to look like, because you can get that any number of places. They're, you know, delivering a particular spin on that news. So, you know, I think that we're in a slightly different position than a strictly news-based site might be. And so, you know, maybe I'm a little bit more sort of sanguine about the risks. I do think that when you start looking at things like the iPad, which I know we haven't talked about, but I'm sure we will, although it can take over a conversation.
Yeah. We just
then
have less than an
clearly
hour.
people are willing to pay for content, and that's a different beast. But I'm comfortable with the way things work on glamour.com right now, and I'm comfortable with the search engine.
Those of you who are online publishers who are doing original content, are you considering paywalls, or have you considered paywalls, or is that something that you would never consider?
So I agree with everything that's been said on this panel. My feeling is that if you're going to charge, there are several different components. The first is you have to have a high-quality brand. You have to be differentiating yourselves. And then I'd say if you have a user base that is primarily expensing the cost of your subscription, meaning your business or your company is paying for it, I'd say you could probably continue to get away with that, get away with charging for content, for the foreseeable future. But in general, I'd say so much of the content right now online is commodity. And if you're going to continue to charge, my feeling is that users are ultimately just going to navigate elsewhere. And I hate to say this, but when we hear about people wanting to charge, the competitive instincts in me kind of jump out, and part of me thinks, well, those users are going to end up on Yahoo, because if you can get that content on Yahoo or on AOL or on the Huffington Post, why would you pay for it? So, and then I'd say there are exceptions. We bought a company called Rivals.com a few years ago, where our users have actually told us that they want to pay, and the reason why they want to pay is because they're getting exclusive access to a defined network that has a community, and users will pay to get something, right? And in this case, what they're getting is they're getting a wall that keeps the riffraff out of the message boards, right? So there are times where people will actually prefer to pay for access. But I think that's really the exception as opposed to the rule.
Those of you who are web publishers, I'm guessing that, since you're not doing online paywalls, you plan to make money from advertising. You're advertising dependent. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And those of you who are launching hundreds and hundreds of sites, and there's going to be enough advertising you see to support all of these services.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
that's a
there
simple
were
answer.
hundreds and hundreds of newspapers.
Tremendous.
It's again back to
So
what,
as more media, as all these media outlets proliferate, and there are more newspapers going online, you're all going to be competing for an X number of ad dollars. No.
But I think you got to keep in mind a couple of things. One is just there's just the upward trend of dollars moving from offline to online. The time spent online just is far in excess of where advertising dollars are. So even if people did nothing, those dollars are moving online. The other part of it, and this is something that I think Google thinks a lot about, and I know Yahoo does as well, and AOL too actually, which is the inefficiencies of buying ads online right now. There hasn't been a whole lot of innovation in the display space in particular. Search advertising was sort of a new thing, and there's been a lot of developments there, and there'll be a lot more to come. But display has been, compared to actually buying an ad in a newspaper or a magazine, it's much harder online. So I think as people sort of begin to think about how to fix that and make it a more efficient process for buying, how to sort of target your ads that much better, I think you couple that with the general shift of dollars online. I think that's the reason that everybody here is pretty optimistic about the opportunity for online advertising.
Yeah, I also think that in addition to the absolute dollars shifting over from offline to online to catch up to where people are spending their time, which is still, there's much catching up to do. What we haven't seen, and which is why I agree with Dan, it's still early days, is the evolution of content and ads. Right, so a lot of the rationale, for, at least historically, for people to create paywalls was so that you could get an ads-free experience, and the assumption there was that somehow ads were bad, that they were interfering with a good experience. But I think whether it's an iPad experience or what some of us are trying to do online, is that there is much room for experimentation and improvement, so that the ads can be as compelling and as helpful and informative in some cases as the content. And so I think there's opportunity here. While obviously separating church and state in a proper way, to say what more could we be doing as web publishers that also rely on advertising to create deeper, more engaging experiences with our users. And the very approach that you take in advertising, whether it's a brand or display, or whether there's some sort of behavior and reward for performance, are vastly different universes. And I don't think that we've kind of reconciled all that, but that's all opportunity.
Every
and that's
advertiser,
huge.
every advertiser that we're talking to is saying, we want to know what you got beyond the banner. I mean,
Absolutely.
everyone,
That's
right. Absolutely.
everyone is saying, yeah, we know about the banners, great. You can throw those in later. We want to know what else you can provide to us, which will enhance our product, but also they want it to enhance the user experience. Meaning their goal is to say, not only do we want people to see it, but we want people to pay attention to it. We want people to think about it. And I think that's a totally different kind of advertising than we've been accustomed to up to this point. And so when people say, oh, you're just doing an ad model? I think it is overly dismissive of what's happening online now. The way we're all getting very creative. And again, that doesn't mean crossing boundaries, but it does mean thinking about what is the goal of this particular advertiser and what are our readers interested in? How do we bring those two things together while also making it clear this is a sponsored piece of material?
Yeah.
Actually-
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Banner has become a dirty word at Yahoo. Like our head of field sales has actually asked us to stop using the word banner. And I think there's something to that. I mean, I was an early adopter with TiVo, and I remember sitting on my couch in 2001 and fast forwarding through the commercials. Now, when I'm on the couch, like, I stop and I actually watch the commercials because they're shot in HD and they look really good. They're part of the entertainment experience right now. That needs to make its way online. And so a year ago, Discovery came to us and asked us to do a takeover of the Yahoo Sports page. And what it did was it pushed down the content on the page several inches. It was a north unit, but it was a new ad unit, and everything went down. And we resisted it because it didn't seem like it was going to be the best user experience. Well, when we saw the ad, when we saw the creative, we saw the actual user experience. It was completely interactive and it looked really stunning. We decided to do it as an experiment. And we looked at engagement on the site. We tracked engagement for the 3 weeks leading up to when the ad ran. On the one day that it ran, we actually saw engagement go up 12%. So if you can make the ad part of the entertainment experience, then everyone wins.
And engagement is key, and we are seeing a difference in the way that companies recognize they have to engage with the audience. They can't just present, the perfect image and not expect some pushback, be willing to engage with the pushback. Let me give you just one quick example. One morning, our splash was about our Move Your Money campaign. We launched this campaign about people who are not happy with the big banks could move their money to community banks or credit unions, and at the same time encourage banks that then reinvest in their communities, create jobs, etc. It happened that on that same day we had a big advertising campaign from Bank of America on the Huffington Post. So you had the splash Move Your Money from big banks, and underneath a Bank of America advertising. No, following the Church of State rules, I didn't hear anything from our advertising people saying, what the hell are you doing? But I waited to see, would they cancel? Would they say, this is not an environment we want to be in? On the contrary, they found it very interesting that in the very place where these issues were being discussed, they could have a presence. So that's, again, a different way that advertising companies and the advertisers themselves are looking at advertising.
And back to what you said, I mean, the only difference in my view is that if you checked engagement and had that ad playing every day, I don't think people would go to Yahoo Sports. So there's a difference between doing something as a novelty and actually a medium where you actually want to go and see that every single day.
You need to strike the balance.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm afraid we're running short on time. We're not going to be able to get to a lot of these questions. But one person asked, with mobile growing as rapidly as it has been, where do you see the future of media in relation to mobile? How will that affect what some of you are doing? Can anyone respond to that?
I'll take this. So mobile and news is obviously going to be the big area here, and that sort of involves iPad and this digital transition. In my view, what we're doing is we're really expanding beyond just a site to include applications, to include delivery items, and possibly maybe even some premium things. So I think changing the mobile landscape in terms of media is going to be really what we're focused on, just because it's a mobile site. You know, and if you look at the progression of what's happened over the last 3 to 5 years and how fast it's actually come to be, I think things will start moving even faster. And I think that's really what we're going to focus on, is how to take advantage of actually being a part of a mobile experience and not just a site.
Cindy, are you guys working on an iPad application, or what's going on? I know several Condé Nast publications
Yes,
do have.
yes,
and
and
Wired
we
supposedly
are.
found some success with it.
Well,
so
those
what are you doing?
statistics I heard this morning on Wired were that they had sold 73,000 downloads in the first 9 days. And that was their June issue that was essentially reformatted, repackaged, and they added some extras to it. But I think the iPad is incredibly exciting for magazine editors, because what do magazines do well? Like, as much as I love Glamour.com, what do I do in Glamour that I can never do well on Glamour.com? Really rich, lush photography, great long form reads, the kinds of things you can really get lost in. And those are things that you can do well on the iPad, and magazines just look fantastic. So this is, of course, the very beginning of the tablet era, and I'm sure whatever, we can play back this tape in 5 years and laugh at the fact that I'm bragging about 73,000 downloads from a magazine in the first 9 days. But, I do think it's an incredibly exciting area, and people do seem to be willing to pay. I mean, that Wired download was $5.
Glamour being a magazine that is aimed at young women, do you see that? I mean, is that maybe in the future the best way to reach that audience? Will Glamour on glossy paper perhaps go away?
I don't think so. I mean, our print business, just to go back to that point about, offline dollars moving into online dollars, our print business has actually grown as our online business has grown. But, what we do well in print, it does have a lot to do with photography and so forth. And, I do think, the iPad, could it conceivably take some readers, somebody who might be currently buying their issue on the newsstand, could they just download it on iTunes in the future? It's certainly possible. I'm not sure it really matters much. I think there will still be people who continue to prefer print, though.
And I think the iPhone apps issue is it seems everyone's saying, oh, we're creating an app. The question of who's going to pay for an app is it's in a similar analysis to the paywall, which is how unique is your content? Are you giving something to someone that is so special that they'll pay for it? Because I think that a lot of people are saying, oh, we're just going to create an iPhone app, and in the hope that people will pay for it. People are only going to pay for it, I think, if it's self-help or it's finance or if it's something specific that they can use.
Or weird porn. Or
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Very weird porn.
I'm afraid we've gone through our hour already, and an hour is just not enough time to talk about the future of media. So, just one last question. Can anyone predict where Huffington Post just turned 5 years old? Where will you be 5 years from now? Can anyone predict how a direction that you may be going? Or do you want to?
But actually, what is for me fascinating is that if you can really predict it, it's not imaginative enough, because so much has happened that nobody could really have predicted. I mean, if you look at the election, and you look at the 2008 election, where YouTube, for example, was such a key part of what happened, and into the 2004 election, 4 years earlier, it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the kind of transformational, revolutionary changes we're seeing. So I think for us to try and pretend that we can imagine what's going to be happening in 5 years is really kind of to miss the boat.
Yeah, the iPad, who knows where that's going to go? And that didn't exist until just now. That's my 2 cents.
I can make one prediction.
Yes.
Paywalls are not going to work.
Paywalls. So is that your message to Rupert Murdoch? Is that what you're
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. Arianna says. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to all the panelists. I wish we could have spent longer talking about the subject, which we could obviously do easily. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you, and enjoy Internet Week New York. Thank you, everybody.
I found it so interesting. It's like really- it's fun.
Yeah.